Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today let's go over a premium medium question in the database category that I just solved on my own. So I'm super happy about this and I'm very glad that I was able to come up with my own solution to this question without any assistance. So let's go over it and let me show you how I did it. This is number 3230, customer purchasing behavior analysis. Quite a long question and lots of things to figure out, so let's jump right in. Basically, you want to calculate these 7 things for each customer being the customer ID. So that's going to be necessary, and let's just take it step by step. And so first of all, we want to calculate the total amount spent. So let's call that total, and that's just going to be a default dict of type integer. That's pretty straightforward. Total amount. And then let's also say the number of transactions is default dict of type set, because that's going to be the transaction ID. Unique categories purchased, unique cat. Let's just call that. Also a default dict of type set. And then in the meantime, because we want the product categories, we have to map the product ID to the category from this table. So let's go ahead and create P2C for IP and enumerate products product ID. So then P2C of product ID is equal to products category of I. Cool. So now that we have that, this enables this. And then the average amount spent, let's call this average amount. Let's call this the default dict of type list, because we're just going to add all the amounts and get like the mean, the sum divided by the length. And then for these two, let's not worry about those for now. And let's go ahead and let's indent this. What the heck? Did I just get rid of those? Well, let's do it again. Total is default dict of type integer, num trans, default dict set, also unique cat, default dict set, and then average amount is default dict of list. Total default dict integer. Cool. All right, so now let's move this out of the way. It's a bit hectic. So now let's go over the transactions table. Customer ID. Let's make better variable names so we don't confuse ourselves. So total cust ID, we're just going to add the amount. Okay, so that's from here. And then for the number of transactions, that's just going to be num trans cust ID dot add transactions transaction ID of I. Cool. So that's that. How many different unique transaction IDs? And then for the unique categories, let's call this unique cat cust ID. We're going to add. That's where this comes in handy. So PTC of the transactions product ID of I. Cool. So the average amount, we're just going to append transactions amount of I, because we're going to get the sum and then the length. And now let's figure out these two, but let's go ahead and actually get, because we just want for each customer ID in the result. So let's call this cust IDs is a set of transactions customer ID. Okay, so for cust ID and cust IDs, let's go ahead and get the total amount is just going to be tot cust ID. That's pretty straightforward. And let's go ahead and create an answer. Let's create a data frame while we're at it. Okay, so, and then also, so the transaction count, let's call this TC, is just going to be the length of known transactions cust ID. Okay, and then the number of unique categories purchased is just unique. So this is going to be length of unique cat cust ID. And then the average amount spent, let's just call this AA. Is just going to be, well, let's call this just A is just going to be the sum of average amount cust ID divided by the length of average amount cust ID. Let's not worry about the rounding for now, or the sorting, we'll do that later. Okay, so the most frequently purchased category. So this is where we need another thing. Let's call this most freak default dict of type list, and we want the category along with the date. So then this is going to map here, which is going to map here. Okay, so let's call this most freak cust ID. We're going to append the date, transaction date of I, because we're going to want to sort it by just the 0th index, because we want the most recent, and then also the P2C transactions product ID of I, because the product ID again maps here, maps there through their dictionary. And now we can just go ahead and find that, but let's actually get this loyalty score knocked out first, which is just going to be the number of transactions, which is just going to be, let's call this NT. Let's call this tot. Let's just call this T. And now let's just go, it's just going to be NT times 10 plus T divided by 100. All right, so now let's go ahead and create a counter, because we're going to want to count the number, all the categories, and then find the most frequent, and then also find the most recent of the most frequent. I know it's a handful, but just bear with me. So most frequent of cust ID. So C of M1, remember that's going to be the category itself, because the 0th index is the date. And let's go ahead and create a variable called biggest to keep track of the biggest frequency. Cool. So now we can go ahead and try to find, so for M in most freak cust ID again, if M of 1, so if C of M of 1 is equal to the biggest, then let's go ahead and create a heap, because we're just going to say h.append M of 0, M of 1, and we're going to sort this by the date, as I mentioned. Cool. So now we basically have everything we need, because h -1 should be the answer for that column. Cool. CC. If you see here, it lines up CC in tab category. All right. So now we can gather the results. So, okay. So answer.append T, well, the cust ID first, and then the total amounts, and T U A H -1, and then the loyalty score. So should 7 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 should have 7 columns, which we do. That's great. Okay, so last but not least, well, we're going to want to sort by the loyalty score in descending order, and then the customer ID in ascending order. And now we can create our data frame. Let's move this up. Let's create 7 different columns because that's how many in the answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's create that many arrays. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. So for v in answer, a.append v0, b.append v1, c.append v2, d.append v3, e.append v4, a, b, c, d, e, f, g. Cool. 7 columns. Customer ID, just set them in order. Total amounts is B. Let's just try to actually run this now because, okay, so that's why this is good that we're running it frequently. So you can see we're good so far. So results transaction count is C. Hello, did the internet go out? Nope. Okay, cool. So, all right. So let's keep going. Unique categories. It's D. Average transaction amount is E. Top category loyalty score. Top category loyalty score. ALTY score is G. Cool. Let's run this. Submit it. And so we're going to run into some rounding errors. So we need to take care of that. I found that the inbuilt Python with round 2 doesn't really work unless you add 0.00005. Basically took me a lot of trial and error to figure this out. And then we can round it to 2 decimal places. Because I think normally the way the libraries works, it just rounds down. So this is just my own workaround. Okay, so, okay, let's submit it. And there you go. Passes all test cases. So again, I'm super happy that I was able to come up with my own solution to this question without any help and solve it completely on my own. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.